right. Thank you everyone for being here. Also, a very warm welcome to all of you. Thank you for taking the time off your busy schedule to convene here at NTU. I know it's not the easiest of places to come to, but we're very thankful for you guys joining us today. So we're going to have a day of just discussions, chat, networking for EarthEngine. Some of you may be beginners, some of you may be experts, some of you might be wanting to learn more. We very much welcome the presence of all of you, and perhaps in this day we can get to know more about what each other is doing, also learn more about what you guys are doing, and maybe have some useful connections and discussions. So I'd like to start off saying that it's really a privilege for me to organize this with some folks here in the room. So we have Sabrina Szeto, who has her own consultancy also on EarthEngine, and she's been really great help working together on this organization for EarthEngine SG. Also Don Dialban, who's present here. He's from the NUS Center for Nature-Based Climate Solutions, also an enthusiast for GIS. So thanks so much, Don, also for working together. We have also Aisha, who's outside, who's been helping us with the registration. Lorian, who's also here from EOS, who's also been helping us with communications. So we are just a very small organizing team. We have one person who's actually not here but virtual, based in the Philippines in the Manila Observatory. I think you guys will get to see her later. Her name is Cheryl. So it's really really fun to work with all of you and also to organize this. Special thanks also to Earth Observatory Singapore, which is a research center of excellence in NTU, if you guys don't know. It is very much focused on looking into hazards and disasters in the region. There's a great team of earth scientists in EOS, and they've been using some very interesting tools and also techniques to map out disasters and hazards. I mean, one of them is here, Sang Ho, who is a professor in INSA and also remote sensing. So thanks very much for joining. We also have folks from CITS, who is our IT support, so thanks also to the folks at the back assisting us with the setup. So I'll just have an overview of the program. We started off with some coffee. I think there's still some snacks outside. Feel free to help yourselves to that. We would have a short discussion, before 10, just to maybe introduce myself and also some members of the team and what we do. After that, we will have lightning talks that are in person. So I think we have 3 people in the room who will be giving us a brief overview about what they do. And then we would have some time for Q&A for these people. So this is also held here. It's also live stream. So all this event is also on the YouTube. Followed by a networking session. So this networking session is held at Function Hall 1, which is right above us. You can just walk up the spiral staircase, and then Dawn will give us more information about what we're doing for the networking session 1. This is followed by lunch, which is also at the function hall, and then networking session 2. And then in the afternoon, we have the lightning talks. So I think we have about 4 or 5 participants online who will actually be giving us talks from around the world. I think one of them is from Europe. So really great to also have people joining us elsewhere. And then we'll close off in the afternoon around 3. I know some of you might not be having lunch if you're observing Ramadan, for example. I just want to let you know that there's a prayer room at level 3 if you are going to have your time for prayer. And I would just want to say maybe the next slide would be about Wi-Fi. Okay, so if you're looking into connecting in this auditorium, you can use NTU Guest, which appears on your Wi-Fi list. And then I think it will have a pop-up window where you are able to key in the username here and also the password. So these things change if you are in the function hall, right? And we've posted also some papers around the venues if you need to have a look at the password and the Wi-Fi username and the password. Okay, so some other ground rules. Based in this venue, we are asked to keep our masks on in the venue unless you're having a drink or having something to eat. If you haven't done the safe entry check-in for this venue, it's located at the entrances of the NEC, so please do so if you haven't done so. I do encourage also that we have an environment that also promotes inclusion and also diversity. So for this reason, for all your interactions, please be respectful in this one-day workshop. I hope you enjoy the discussions with one another. If you need any assistance, you have any questions about today, don't hesitate to reach out to any one of us that are in the organizing committee. We'll be happy to assist you. And lastly, I'd just like to inform you that we might have some videographers going around the room to take some videos and photos. We are thinking of producing a very short video for this event. So you might see some of our personnel, just taking photos and videos. I also like to acknowledge a grant that made all this possible, which is from NTU. It is an internal grant from NTU and Imperial College, sorry. And this grant allowed us to have the money to actually book this place and also arrange for these, the logistics of this. Okay, so I think that's about it for the introduction. Perhaps a very short panel discussion before 10, which I think is about 7 minutes, right? So we would be having perhaps a Slido that's coming up. And actually, this is more about getting to know the audience in the room. So if you haven't heard about Slido, it is an online tool that allows us to gather responses from the audience. And we are interested to also know from you guys where you come from and also what is your expertise in the room. So I think Sabrina is setting that up. But in the meantime, maybe I can also just, okay, right, she's already set it up. So if you have your phone, I think there's something that you need to key in Slido. So you probably have to go to the website first, which is app.sly.do. And I think it's the password, or Sabrina will come down and help us. Thanks, Sabrina.
Thank you. Okay, so there's a website called Slido, so it's slido.com. And the event code is #EESG. And this will take you to something that looks like this, which is the poll. And we basically are interested in learning more about your experience with EarthEngine as a group. I know some of you have filled this information in during the registration, but we want to just get the overall view. So feel free to go in and vote. So the website is slido.com. And there's an event code you can type in, which is EESG. And that will take you to this page. So yeah, we see 50% so far, 6 people have responded. 50% are new. Okay, it's going up. People have basic knowledge, yep. Great, so feel free to fill this in. Okay, so we have 64% people with some basic knowledge of EarthEngine. 18% are completely new. 9% are experts. 9% have a solid background. Okay, so I'm going to go on to the next poll. So the next poll is going to be on the topics. So what topics or applications do you work on? You can type in as a text a few words describing, for example, hazards or energy or agriculture, what the topics are that you work on. And this will also show as a word cloud once we have some people showing. Okay.
Okay. Yeah. Okay, cool. So quite a lot of different topics here. Hazard, cyclone, big data, road inspections, infrastructure. There's one on hawker culture. That's quite interesting. Yeah, that's cool. Does it show like which are the big words or no?
I think it looks like environment and forest fires and forest and carbon on the right. Like these are the topics that more than one person have typed in. But it looks like we have a very diverse range of people. So I'm going to ask all the forest people, land use, land cover, that's also a huge topic. So, okay, forest people, please raise your hands and look at each other. All the forest people, forest degradation, okay, you see each other, right? Later networking, you can find each other, okay? Okay, next, agriculture. Who is working on agriculture? Please raise your hand. Look around the room. Okay, 4 people here, wonderful, 5 people. Okay, who are the land use, land cover? There's a big one. Land use, land cover. Okay, so feel free to notice who you each other are and then see each other later at the networking. Okay, great. So now I'd like to welcome Janice and Dawn back up on stage.
Okay, so I think really just briefly, I could also introduce why we organized this. There was quite some time that I actually met Sabrina at the EarthEngine for Good conference in San Francisco. That was in 2017. And during that time, I think we realized, okay, there's so much applications for good for EarthEngine. We're very keen to see a community in Singapore. And so during that time, I think we didn't know many people in Singapore who actually use this platform. But I think between this 2017 to 2022, a lot of things have changed. Many people actually join, work in Singapore. They bring their expertise here. We are seeing a lot more people who are using EarthEngine for urban applications coming from, say, the Singapore ETH Center. I know some folks there as well. Also within EOS, I think people are interested to use it for hazards. I think the Nature-Based Climate Solutions Center also are using it a lot for protecting the forest and conservation of forests. So I think we see a lot more people within Singapore in the last 5 years. And that's also one of the motivations behind working together. So once I receive a grant, I reach out to Sabrina, also Dawn. And so we started to form this small group of community of EarthEngine users, and we hope to raise it up a bit more and to increase the number of people who can connect and also to work together on this. Last year in September, we organized a completely online virtual conference where we had people who are from various parts of the world. We also had Nick Clinton, who is one of the EarthEngine outreach person, to give a keynote speech. And we had many expert users like Nick Murray. I don't know if you know him. He works on coastal erosions. I think Keiko Nomura, who has been working a lot on applications for EarthEngines. So they also gave some really nice sort of seminar talks for that virtual conference. And we had some workshops in the evening, like tutorials and how to develop EarthEngine. So following on from last year's completely online event, which I think was also more catered to the Asia-Pacific region, we had people coming in from Philippines, Indonesia, which was great to see, and also to see some, hopefully capacity building in this process. We decided to have something more in person, and I think once the regulations started to be less strict in Singapore, we envisioned something that's more in person. So that's why we organized this sort of short one-day workshop, which is very informal, quite simple, really just to reach out to folks in Singapore, maybe coming from the industry or the agencies in Singapore, mostly from academic institutes here. So really nice to see you guys joining. We might have a few more coming in, slowly strangling in. But that's really the purpose and also the history behind this development of EarthEngine. So I think our goal and hope is that maybe we could develop some kind of long-term community that can have more interactions, more developments of perhaps research ideas, and also applications in the industry and also within the public agencies in Singapore. All right, so that's it from me. Maybe a bit of background for myself. I'm an assistant professor at the Asian School of the Environment. I work on land use and land cover change, mainly on deforestation and palm oil expansion. I started using EarthEngine in 2013, but that was when it was very buggy. And then, I kind of like persisted in it, and now I still use it, but maybe through my students, not so much by myself. Yeah, I mean, it's a very useful tool. I find it always developing for the better. Yeah, so that's it for me. I'll pass it on to Don. Maybe you can describe a bit more about what you do.
Hi, everyone. Good morning. So I'm Don De Alban. I'm a senior researcher at the Center for Nature-Based Climate Solutions at the National University of Singapore. So I'm very happy to see you all. And to finally have this opportunity to, at least get to interact and have, the second part of the EarthEngine at SG. Activity. So my background is in remote sensing. So I do radar remote sensing and multispectral remote sensing, but then applied to forest land use change. And then the work that I have at the center is on carbon research, improving the estimation of carbon in different carbon pools. What else? So I first used Google Earth Engine in 2016. And actually, the first paper that I read, like how do I go through this, was actually Janice's paper that she published. And then the code was also there. So it's really helpful compared to the way we maybe have been using the software tools before, that you only use the power of your machine, right? Like now it's in the cloud, so it was very different for me as well. So, and I'm hoping to later throughout the rest of the day to get to hopefully interact with you all. Like I've already, been really excited, like meeting people. So yeah, hopefully later today, we'll get to chat a bit more. Yeah. So I'll pass it on to Sabrina.
All right, thank you again, everyone. Thank you, Dawn, for your introduction. So I'll be introducing myself as part of the lightning talks. So because we are trying to adhere to COVID measures here, each person who comes up here to speak for the lightning talks, I'll be giving you a new mic, and we'll be disinfecting the previous mics from before. And for the speakers, there's also going to be a clicker. So this is how you will be advancing your slides. There's this green button that you can click, and it will advance the slides. So for the lightning talks, we have 5 minutes per speaker, and we're going to take one question from the audience after each speaker is done, as well as have a general round of open Q&A at the end, so question and answers. And our first talk is going to be by me, so you all have a practice run of how to gently encourage the speakers when they're done talking to leave the stage. Basically at the 5 minutes mark, I will wave like this. At like 1 minute before the speaker is done, I will show them 1 minute. So the speakers see and everyone can see that they have 1 minute. And then when I wave like this, you all can start clapping very slowly. So if you want to practice now, let's practice clapping very, very slowly, and then we get faster and faster, okay? Yes, so we give our speakers a bit of social pressure to gently leave the stage. And we have 3 speakers today. Our first speaker is Radhika Bhargava, and she'll be talking about the previous shoreline dynamics, determine future susceptibility to cyclone impacts. Next, we have Sonu Kumar, who will be speaking on flood mapping with Sentinel-1 GRD SAR images using Google Earth Engine. And our last speaker is Keith Key, who will be speaking on the early detection of leaks in petrochemical oil and gas pipelines using satellite technology. Okay, so I'm going to give an example of a lightning talk. maybe can someone volunteer to time me for 5 minutes? And then I will pretend to talk very long, and then you'll have to clap me off the stage, okay? All right, okay. So thank you for volunteering, Akash. So hello everyone, I'm Sabrina Szeto. I'm a geospatial consultant, and I'm also the co-founder and director of Women Plus in Geospatial, which is a network for women and underrepresented genders in the geospatial industry. I'm here to talk to you today about building community through EarthEngine virtual meetups. So since 2019, I've been running a series of meetups to bring together users in the EarthEngine community. And we have a model which basically involves having a guest speaker from around the world volunteer to share their work for about 20 minutes each session. And then we have open Q&A where people in the community can ask questions and learn more about what they're doing, some of the challenges they might face with the platform, and also ask technical questions. So this highlights the work of EarthEngine developers and users around the world. And sometimes you might be the only one where you're working or where you're studying who's using this platform. So this gives people a chance to connect and learn from each other. So we've had about 20 meetups since October 2nd, 2019 when we began. And each time we have about 10 to 100 people. This is all done on Zoom, so this has been fully online during the pandemic. And the videos are recorded, and we have also a YouTube channel. So you can see some of our past videos on the right here. And as Janice mentioned earlier, we also worked together to organize EarthEngine SG last year in September. We had almost 1,300 tickets sold. We estimate there are about 400 unique attendees. And this was a completely community-led virtual event. So as Janice mentioned, we had a number of parallel talks from speakers from UNOSET, Kumi Analytics, James Cook University, Climate Engine to talk about their applications of EarthEngine. And then we also had some parallel workshops for beginners, intermediate, advanced users from Imperial College London, Climate Engine, and EO Data Science. And once again, these talks are also online. So we had our first networking session during that event, and one thing that came out of it was that we wanted to have a follow-up event in person, in which all of you are attending today. So we're really glad to be able to see you all in person and get to network also face-to-face. So for those of you who are thinking about starting your own meetups at your school or your workplace, here are some tips for you. First, find other EarthEngine users. You might be able to find them by asking around who else is using this platform. And once you identify these people, send them an email, bring people together, introduce folks to this concept where maybe you all can take turns giving a short talk at lunch or something, and decide if there's interest in having a regular meetup, and then make this happen. Make a plan for the schedule. So do you want to meet once a month, twice a month, things like this? And they can also feel free to also ask questions and help each other out, because sometimes you might get stuck on things. And then invite others to join the sessions as well. Okay, so at this point, I'm going to pretend that I've gone over time, right? Okay, so Akash can wave at me. Okay, yeah, you can wave, all right. Okay, so you'll practice clapping me off the stage, okay? Let's go. So clap slowly. Okay, then I feel that I have to leave, so I will just go off the stage. Okay, thank you. So after each talk, we have one question. So does anyone have a question from the audience? Okay, Janice, you look like you have a question. Do you have a question? Okay, yeah, so Janice will pass the mic to the next person who has a question. All right, so now you have kind of an idea of what the lightning talk looks like. Let's invite our first speaker, Radhika Bhargava, to join us on stage.
Hi everyone, I'm Radhika Bhargava. I'm a final year PhD student at National University of Singapore in the Geography department, and I'm also a National Geographic explorer. Today I'll be talking about the cumulative impact of cyclones on mangrove shorelines. I've been working with Google Earth Engine since my master's, so I had the opportunity to work with the Google Earth Engine team in San Francisco and Mountain View. So I'm thinking about them while I'm giving this presentation, and I'm welcoming you all to Singapore. With that, let's get started. About 11% of global mangrove loss is caused by extreme weather events alone, of which cyclone is one of the causes. 40% of all the mangroves in the world lie in the cyclone-prone belt. So the impact of cyclones on mangroves is evident. In our study, we were interested in looking at how these cyclones specifically impact the mangrove shorelines. To do that, we are asking, what is the relationship between historical shoreline dynamics on the future susceptibility of mangrove forests to cyclones? We looked at the damage of mangroves due to cyclones across the whole forest, the loss of mangrove shoreline specifically, and then the loss of mangroves based on the historical shoreline change. We are doing this in the Sundarbans, which is the largest contiguous mangrove forest between India and Bangladesh. So I keep saying this word, previous shoreline history, previous shoreline dynamics. What does that mean? So basically, any kind of change a shoreline has taken place in the past, and this change can be in the form of lateral increase in land, which is progradation or accretion, and the lateral decrease in land, which is erosion. So we took the global surface water exchange layer, which is freely available on Google Earth Engine, to extract different kinds of gains and loss with different temporalities, so permanent, seasonal, and ephemeral changes across the Sundarban shorelines. We created the first ever mangrove shoreline change map for the Sundarbans between 1985 and 2018. And then we found out that erosion was one of the major causes of shoreline change between this time period. But we also realized that other than erosion, there was a lot of other kind of shoreline change, like seasonal losses and seasonal gains. So that made us wonder how, when a cyclone occurs, these different kinds of shoreline changes react to the cyclone impact. So we took 3 different cyclones that occurred between 2019 and 2020. Then we took the Sentinel-2 data to identify mangroves before and after each cyclone event to get mangrove forest damage. Then we took Sentinel-1 to identify the loss in the conversion of mangrove pixel to a water pixel, along with the shoreline dynamic classes I showed you in the previous slide, to get the loss of mangrove shoreline in relation to the different kinds of history that particular area has gone through. And we found out that across the 3 different cyclones, which is the green, yellow, and red tracks, the damage and loss occurred in the same area, no matter what the intensity of the cyclone was and no matter what the trajectory of the cyclone was. So you can see the 3 different cyclones occurred in various areas, but they impacted the same areas over and over. Specifically, the damage happened in the same areas across the mangrove forest, and the shoreline loss occurred in the same area. So those are the 2 hotspots for that loss. From the graph, we can see that Cyclone Amphan, being the most intense cyclone, caused the most amount of damage. But what's interesting is Cyclone Bulbul was the least intense cyclone, but it caused the most amount of shoreline erosion. I'm going to leave that up to you guys to ask me, what's this curious case of Cyclone Bulbul? We also, we were specifically interested in how these different shoreline classes of historical change reacts to cyclone impact. We found out that across the 3 different cyclones we studied, the impact was taking place with the same intensity across these different shoreline classes. So for example, erosion was getting the most amount of impact across the 3 different cyclones, and the trend was followed in a similar fashion. And I would like to remind you that the cyclone had different tracks and different intensities, but the impact was similar across the different kinds of shorelines, which made us to come up with the conclusion that previous shoreline dynamics or history of change do in fact impact the future susceptibility or vulnerability of different shorelines to cyclone impact. With that, thank you so much, and this wouldn't have been possible without the people and the amazing organizations I work with. Thank you. I can take questions.
Thank you, Radhika. So do we have a question from the audience? See, I have, okay, Akash?
What's the curious case of Cyclone Bulbul?
Thanks for asking. So Cyclone Bulbul was the least intense cyclone, and it occurred during a low tide condition. So when the cyclone is not that intense, the wave height caused by the cyclone is not that high. And it also occurred during the low tide conditions. So these things in combination led the impact only to reach the low elevation areas of the shoreline, which was where most of the erosion was taking place. So most of the impact actually occurred in the low elevation areas, whereas the other 2 cyclones occurred during a high tide condition, and the intensity was much higher. So this is called tidal buffering. So the low elevation areas got buffered and the impact reached in the inside of the forest. Thanks for asking.
Thank you, Radhika.
Thank you.
Next, we'd like to welcome Sonu Kumar, who will be speaking on flood mapping with Sentinel-1 GRD SAR images using Google Earth Engine.
Excuse me. Good morning, everyone. Myself, Sonu Kumar, and a first-year PhD student working in the Tropical Rivers Group at the Earth Observatory of Singapore and NIA. My professor is Professor Edward Park. So today I'm going to talk about my mini project on the mapping of the flood with the Sentinel data using the Google Earth Engine platform. So my discussion of the research background, objectives, and the studies area descriptions, methodological framework, then the result discussion and conclusion. Yeah, so as you can see, like recently there was a huge flood event happened in the Malaysia. So we tried to find out the map, try to do some analysis on the flood, we use the Google Earth engines to map the flooded area to provide the government support and to understand the extent of the flood in the Malaysia. So, yeah, so we use the Sentinel data set because, as you all know, the flooded event happened during the rainy season. There is a lot of clouds, so optical image you cannot use. So Sentinel data can penetrate the clouds that can detect the ground, what's happening on the ground. So it's a very good data set to use or study the flood. So let's have a discussion, description about the study area. So basically, this is a peninsula part of the Malaysia. So we focus on only the Selangor district, that was the highly affected district of the Malaysia. So let's have also discuss on the rainfall pattern, especially so. In the month of October and November, December, there was a heavy rainfall happened in the Selangor part of the Selangor district of the Malaysia. This overview, to understand the monsoonal pattern of the peninsula part of the region. Yeah. So these are the overall methodologies. The first was to collect the image. So we are consistent with all instrument properties. So we filter all of the data set. And then second is the processing of the data set. As you know, there is a lot of noise, so we need to remove the noise. So here we use the spectrum. Then we have a comparisons. As you are using the Sentinel data, so calculate the difference after the image and before the image to understand the change. So here we take the ratio of two data set, and the threshold we get the 1.25. That means the value is, the ratio is more than 1.25, that's considered as a flood, and the less than normal condition. Then we have, then we get the instant flood map. So there is also the many variables to take it out. Then we get the last one, we get the real flood map. So let's discuss in detail here. So once we get the instant flood map before the masking out, there is a three bodies that is not considered as a flood. The first is the permanent and semi-permanent water. That is generally not a flood. And the second is the area where the slope is more than 5%, there water cannot accumulate. So we need to take the we need to take out the area. Then we can find the, after taking it out, masking out, then we get the flood map. So let's have a complete discussion here. So this study said that approximately 23% of the total area of the Selangor district was flooded. That's going to give the overview of the flood effect impact analysis for the government and supply the financial support to the governments. Yeah, thank you very much. That was my end of presentations. If anybody is interested in doing such research, I will be happy to share the script of the Google Earth. You can reach out me on this Google email ID. Yeah.
Thank you, Sonu. Is there a question from the audience for Sonu? Please raise your hand and feel free to ask your question. Okay. Keith?
I would just like to ask whether it's government or private that will do such survey.
Yeah, actually this depends on this type of a study generally asked by the government to this can be used for the government as well as the private organization as well. So for government are interested to supply, supply the financial aid to the flood affected people. So they try to look which area is the heavy flood and what is the extent of the flood. And even some organization, government organization, they try to give the financial support on the agriculture and urban area. So they try to look which area is affected and how they can reach out to that area during the flood event. So that's very impactful. And for the private sector, they try to do the post analysis, after the flood events, how they can recover all of the losses, and that's important for them. Yeah, thanks.
Thank you, Sonu. All right, we'd like to welcome the next speaker onto the podium, and none other than Keith. So Keith will be presenting on the early detection of leaks in petrochemical oil and gas pipelines using satellite technology. So thank you, Keith. It's the green button.
Thank you. Well, I don't have a PhD. I'm just normal, someone's been in industry a long time. Basically, what we do is we do a lot of non-intrusive critical asset inspection, mostly oil and gas. I think you know the risk factor is higher there in utilities and power plant. So we have been always asked to detect for early detection of leaks in gas pipeline or oil pipeline. And well, it's easy if we have a few pipelines, but some pipelines are cross-country, about 200, 300 kilometers. So you can't have somebody driving along the pipeline to detect the leaks. There are two scenarios. The first scenario is what we call pipeline corridors or racks of pipeline. That means there are many pipelines within the area. This is quite common in Jurong Island and petrochemical plants. So you get congested pipelines in multi-stories. So how are you going to inspect those pipelines to check whether there are leaks? The other aspect of the pipeline is cross-country. It can be 100 kilometers, 200 kilometers, 300 kilometers. It can cross a desert. We've done that in the Middle East. It can cross vegetation in jungle like Myanmar, and it could be buried above ground. So these are the conditions that you'll be working with. So I mentioned is the first scenario is corridor space. They'll be carrying different material, mostly toxic, combustible, either can be gas or liquid. And most of these pipelines are carbon steel or stainless steel. Okay, and the other one is cross-country pipeline, basically two types, the crude oil or the gas pipelines, right? So current task is The risk is you actually drive along pipeline or do inspection to detect for leaks. But of course, you cannot detect everything, and undetected leaks could lead to disasters like, for example, explosion. How do I go back? Okay, there's currently no method, and I say, for example, those pipeline racks, you can't use a robot because there are a lot of obstacles, the pipelines, the rack itself. You cannot install sensors because just imagine 200-300 kilometer pipeline is very expensive, and you cannot use drones because the drones may hit the pipeline. And in cross-country pipeline, you have sensors, you have solar panel. This is very good for people to take for the home use. So you find things missing. So what are we looking at? We're looking at data analytics, we're looking at early detection, and we're looking at what type of satellite products. Like I said, we don't have knowledge of this. We have come across a company, a China company, about 5 years ago. They said they can do it. We started talking to them. They said, oh, China company, Singapore is too small. We don't want to talk to you. So it's a bit demoralizing. But I'm sure within the period of the last 5 years, someone could have developed something. I'm here to find out. I'm here to learn. And hopefully it'll be something implementable. Thank you.
Thank you, Keith. So do we have a question from anyone from the audience? Maybe at the back? Anybody there? Okay, no question. Akash?
Sorry, question in two parts. Who's we? What's your organization? And
yeah, I'm from a company, but also I'm the president for the Corrosion Association Singapore.
okay.
And formerly I was chairman for the National Association Corrosion Engineers. So this is the work we do.
Okay.
But I'm doing it as a company.
Okay. So what kind of a budget does a company like yours have for, exploring the new technologies and stuff?
Right
Just out of
now,
curiosity.
okay, let's talk about two things. One is budget, non-budget. First of all, cross-country pipeline is impossible to do it. If you're going to install sensors, it's going to drive along it. That's why we're looking at non-intrusive. Satellite will be good. And second budget is if you have a workable solution or fast to market, and it can be more expensive than people walking the pipeline. So it's a doable solution because of the risk assessment. It's high risk. Does that answer the question? Thank you.
Great, thank you. Thank you, Keith. So I would like to invite again all the previous speakers. Radhika, Sonu, please come back up on stage. So we're going to have an open time of question and answer, which means that anybody who has a question, you're welcome also to get ready your question to ask. So once again, if I can invite you to go online to this website, slido.com, and look at the event code #EESG to log in to the question and answer. Your questions will come to me on the podium here, and then I'll be able to actually pass the questions along to our speakers. So feel free to use this. And yeah, so if you have any questions, please go to slido.com #EESG and type in the questions. Maybe to begin with, I will ask each of the speakers to share a little bit about how you found out about EarthEngine. When did you start using it? I know Keith is exploring the use of EarthEngine, so I'll direct this to Sonu and Radhika. Sonu, would you like to start, and then Radhika next?
Thank you very much. Thank you very much for this question. This question is very important when you are the beginner and when you are looking to save our time. The Google Earth Engine is the most important to save our time, because as you know, when you do the geospatial data analysis on the ArcGIS software and any other software, that's a lot of time consuming, and it's also required to download the data in our local machine. But in Google Earth system provide the reliable, the alternative platform to do the geospatial data. Sometimes, as a beginner, we do not have the high computing power, like high computing machines, so we cannot use the heavy work like we cannot analyze the big data. So personally, I feel the Google Earth Engine is a great platform to explore and to handle the big data set. That's really important. And the another first second, like when we hear about the Google Earth Engine, the first thing come in our mind, like we thought we don't have any background on the programming. So I think this is not the big issue. We can deal with this issue. Like nowadays, we do not have to be a programmer like the C programming. As you know, the C programming is quite hard, but another programming, and I'm also the Python programmer. So first time I was thinking, how can I use the Google Earth Engine within the JavaScript? But once I started learning the Google Earth Engine, I compare with the Python programming. It was almost similar, like little bit difference, but people can use it. And the third, conclusion is we do not have to concern with the programming language. Programming language can be found on the Google, and even though we can attend the various webinar of the Google Earth Engine, so we have a lot of most of the analysis we can get on the Google Earth platform with the examples. We just have to understand what the meaning of this line. We do not have to remember the script. So you can copy paste and you can edit your data like code with our own.
Yes, that's a great point. Yeah, you can
that's
definitely
important.
reuse.
We do not need to remember the code. We can just have to understand the meaning of the codes, and you can edit for our own work. The second
Can I also let Radhika answer maybe quickly the question? How did you encounter Earth Engine? Thank you, Sonu.
So I encountered Earth Engine because when I joined my master's program at University of San Francisco, my then advisor, Dr. David Sa, which a few of you might know, was trying to find someone to work with Google Earth Engine, and all the master students declined. And then I joined the lab, and he was like, do you want to work on this? And I was like, I have no idea what it is, but sure, why not? I'll give it a try. So he gave me 1 week. He went to a conference, and then he pointed me towards the Earth Engine tutorials, and he was like, go crazy, have fun. So in 1 week, I went through all the Google Earth Engine tutorials, and I really wanted to impress my new advisor, right? So I came up with this project to identify snow cover change in the Himalayas. While he was in the conference, I sent him that, look at this cool project I did. He replied and said I was a rock star, and since then I've been hooked to Google Earth Engine.
Excellent. Okay, so motivation is important, and knowing where to find answers is also important. So I have one question here from the audience. If you had a magic